but they should serve you well. They are light to wear and warm enough or cool enough at need. And you will find them a great aid in keeping out of the sight of unfriendly eyes, whether you walk among the stones or the trees. You are indeed high in the favor of the lady, for she herself and her maidens wove this stuff, and never before have we clad strangers in the garb of our own people. After their morning meal, the company said farewell to the Lord by the fountain. Their hearts were heavy, for it was a fair place, and it had become like home to them, though they could not count the days and nights that they had passed there. As they stood for a moment,
Fire, how
looking
you
at the
doing?
white water in the sunlight,
Give me 1 second and we'll be right back.
walking towards them over the green grass of the glade. Frodo greeted him with delight. I have returned from the northern fences, said the elf, and I am sent now to be your guide again. The Dimril Dale is full of vapor and clouds of smoke, and the mountains are troubled. There are noises in the deeps of the earth. If any of you had thought of returning northwards to your homes, you would not have been able to pass that way. But come, your path now goes south. As they walked through Caras Galathon, the green ways were empty, but in the trees above them many voices were heard and singing. They themselves went silently. At last Haldir led them down the southward slopes of the hill, and they came again to the great gate hung with lamps, and to the white bridge. And so they passed out and left the city of the elves. Then they turned away from the paved road and took a path that went off into a deep thicket of mallow trees, and passed on, winding through rolling woodlands of silver shadow, leading them ever down southwards and eastwards towards the shores of the river. They had gone some 10 miles, and noon was at hand when they came on a high green wall. Passing through an opening, they came suddenly out of the trees. Before them lay a long lawn of shining grass, studded with golden Eleanor that glinted in the sun. The lawn ran out into a narrow tongue between bright margins. On the right and west, the silver road flowed glittering. On the left and east, the great river rolled its broad waters deep and dark. On the further shores, the woodlands still marched on southwards as far as eye could see, but all the banks were bleak and bare. No mallow lifted its gold-hung boughs beyond the land of Nordic. On the bank of the silver road, at some distance up from the meeting of the streams, there was a hive of white stones and white wood. By it were moored many boats and barges. Some were brightly painted and shone with silver and gold and green, but most were either white or grey. 3 small grey boats had been made ready for the travellers, and in these the elves stowed their goods. And they added also coils of rope, 3 to each boat. Slender they looked, but strong, silken to the touch, grey of hue like the elven cloaks. "What are these?" asked Sam, handling one that lay upon the greensward. "Ropes, indeed," answered an elf from the boats. "Never travel far without a rope, and one that is long and strong and light. Such are these.
Let's do a dab.
They may be a help in many needs." "You don't need to tell me that," said Sam. "I came without any, and I've been worried ever since. But I was wondering what these were made of, knowing a bit about rope making. It's in the family, as you might say." "They are made of Hithla," said the elf, "but there is no time now to instruct you in the art of their making. Had we known that this craft delighted you, we could have taught you much. But now, alas, Unless you should at some time return hither, you must be content with our gift. May it serve you well. Come, said Haldir. All is now ready for you. Enter the boats, but take care at first. Heed the words, said the other elves. These boats are light built and they are crafty, and unlike the boats of other folk, they will not sink. Lade them as you will, but they are wayward if mishandled. It would be wise if you accustomed yourselves to stepping in and out here where there is a landing place before you set off downstream. The company was arranged in this way. Aragorn, Frodo, and Sam were in one boat. Boromir, Merry, and Pippin in another, and in the third were Legolas and Gimli, who had now become fast friends. In this last boat, most of the goods and packs were stowed. The boats were moved and steered with short-handled paddles that had broad leaf-shaped blades. When all was ready, Aragorn led them on a trial up the Silver Road. The current was swift and they went forward slowly. Sam sat in the bows, clutching the sides and looking back wistfully to the shore. The sunlight glittering on the water dazzled his eyes. As they passed beyond the green field of the tongue, trees drew down to the river's brink. Here and there, golden leaves floated in the green. The air was soft, bright, and still. There was a silence, except for the high, distant sound of the They turned a sharp bend in the river, and there, sailing proudly down the stream towards them, they saw a swan of great size. The water rippled on either side of the white horse beneath its curving neck. Its beak shone like burnished gold, and its eyes glinted like jet set in yellow stones. Its huge white wings were half lifted. A man came down the river as it drew nearer, and suddenly they perceived that it was a ship, wrought and carved with elven skill in the likeness of a bird. Two elves, clad in white, steered it with black paddles. In the midst of the vessel sat Celeborn, and behind him stood Galadriel, tall and white. A circlet of golden flowers was in her hair, and in her hand she held a harp. She sang. Sad and sweet was the sound of her voice in the cool, clear air. I sang of leaves of gold, and leaves of gold the green. Of wind I sang, a wind there came.
Had to give it a
And in
little bit before we start round one. That
that
one hurt a little bit.
Beyond the sun, beyond the moon, the foam was on the sea. And by the strand of Ilmarin there grew a golden tree. Beneath the stars of Evereve in Eldamar it shone. In Eldamar beside the walls of Elven Tirion. There long the golden leaves have grown upon the branching years, while here beyond the sundering seas now fall the elven tears. O Lorien, the winter comes, the bare and leafless day. The leaves are falling in the stream, the river flows away. O Lorien, too long I have dwelt upon this hither shore, and in a fading crown have twined the golden Evermore. But if of ships I now should sing, what ship would come to me? What ship would bear me ever back across so wide? Aragorn stayed his boat as the swan ship drew alongside. The lady ended her song and greeted them. "We have come to bid you our last farewell," she said, "and to speed you with blessings from our land." "Though you have been our guests," said Celeborn, "you have not yet eaten with us, and we bid you, therefore, to a parting feast here between the flowing waters that will bear you far from Lorien." The swan passed on slowly to the hive, and they turned their boats and followed it. There, in the last end of Egladir, upon the green grass, the parting feast was held. But Frodo ate and drank little, heeding only the beauty of the lady and her voice. She seemed no longer perilous or terrible, nor filled with hidden power. Already she seemed to him, as by men of later days, elves still at times are seen, present and yet remote, a living vision of that which has already been left far behind by the flowing streams of time. After they had eaten and drunk, sitting upon the grass, Celeborn spoke to them again of their journey, and lifting his hand, he pointed south to the woods beyond the tongue. "As you go down the water," he said, "you will find that the trees will fail, and you will come to a barren country. There the river flows in stony vales amid high moors until at last, after many leagues, it comes to the tall island of the Tindrock that we call Tol Brandir. There it casts its arms about the steep shores of the isle and falls then with a great noise and smoke over the cataracts of Rauros, down into the Lindalf, the Wetwang as it is called in your tongue. That is a wide region of sluggish fen, where the stream becomes tortuous and much divided. There the Entwash flows in by many mouths from the forest of Fangorn to the west. About that stream, on this side of the great river, lies Rohan. On the further side are the bleak hills of the Emin Muir. The wind blows from the east there, for they look out over the dead marshes and the no-man lands to Kirith Gorgor and the black gates of Mordor. Boromir and any that go with him seeking Minas Tirith will do well to leave the great river above Rauros and cross the Entwash before it finds the marshes. Yet they should not go too far up that stream, nor risk becoming entangled in the forest of Fangorn. That is a strange land, and is now little known. But Boromir and Aragorn doubtless do not need this warning. "Indeed, we have heard of Fangorn in Minas Tirith," said Boromir. "But what I have heard seems to me, for the most part, old wives' tales, such as we tell to our children. All that lies north of Rohan is now to us so far away that fancy can wander freely there. Of old, Fangorn lay upon the borders of our realm, but it is now many lives of men since any of us visited it, to prove or disprove the legends that have come down from distant years. I have myself been at whiles in Rohan, but I have never crossed it northwards. When I was sent out as a messenger, I passed through the gap by the skirts of the White Mountains and crossed the Eisen and the Grey Flood into Northernland. A long and wearisome journey. 400 leagues I reckoned it, and it took me many months, for I lost my horse at Tharbad at the fording of the Grey Flood. After that journey, and the road I've trodden with this company, I do not much doubt that I shall find a way through Rohan, and Fangorn too, if need be. Then I need say no more, said Cannibal. But do not despise the lore that has come down from distant years, for oft it may chance that old wives keep in memory word of things that once were needful for the wise to know. Now Galadriel rose from the grass, and taking a cup from one of her maidens, she filled it with white mead and gave it to Cannibal. Now it is time to drink the cup of farewell, she said. Drink, Lord of the Galathrine, and let not your heart be sad, though night must follow noon, and already our evening draweth nigh. Then she brought the cup to each of the company, and bade them drink and farewell. But when they had drunk, she commanded them to sit again on the grass, and chairs were set for her and for Cannibal. Her maidens stood silent about her, and a while she looked upon her guests. At last she spoke again. We have drunk the cup of parting, she said, and the shadows fall between us. But before you go, I have brought in my ship gifts which the Lord and Lady of the Galathrine now offer you in memory of LOTH. Then she called each in turn. Here is the gift of Celeborn and Galadriel to the leader of your company, she said to Aragorn, and she gave him a sheath that had been made to fit his sword. It was overlaid with a tracery of flowers and leaves, wrought of silver and gold, and on it were set in elven runes formed of many gems the name Anduril and the lineage of the sword. The blade that is drawn from this sheath shall not be stained or broken, even in defeat. But is there aught else that you desire of me at our parting? For darkness will flow between us, and it may be that we shall not meet again, unless it be far hence upon a road that has no returning. And Aragorn answered, Lady, you know all my desire, and long held in keeping the only treasure that I see. Yet it is not yours to give me, even if you would, and only through darkness shall I come to it. Yet maybe this will lighten your heart, said Galadriel, for it was left in my care to be given to you should you pass through this land. Then she lifted from her lap a great stone of a clear green set in a silver brooch that was wrought in the likeness of an eagle with outspread wings. As she held it up, the gem flashed like the sun shining through the leaves of spring. This stone I gave to Celebrian, my daughter, and she to hers, and now it comes to you as a token of hope. In this hour take the name that was foretold for you, Elessar, the elf stone of the house of Elendil. Then Aragorn took the stone and pinned the brooch upon his breast, and those who saw him wondered, for they had not marked before how tall and kingly he stood, and it seemed to them that many years of toil had fallen from his shoulders. For the gifts that you have given me, I thank you, he said, O Lady of Lorien, of whom were sprung Celebrian and Arwen, infant star. What praise could I say more? The lady bowed her head, and she turned then to Boromir, and to him she gave a belt of gold, and to Merry and Pippin she gave small silver belts, each with a clasp wrought like a golden flower. To Legolas she gave a bow such as the Galathri used, longer and stouter than the bows of Mirkwood, and strung with a string of elf hair. With it went a quiver of arrows. For you, little gardener and lover of trees, she said to Sam, I have only a small gift. She put into his hand a little box of plain grey wood, unadorned save for a single silver rune on the lid. Here is set G for Galadriel, she said, but also it may stand for garden in your tongue. In this box there is earth from my orchard, and such blessing as Galadriel has still to bestow is upon it. It will not keep you on your road, nor defend you against any peril, but if you keep it and see your home again at last, then perhaps it may reward you. Though you should find all barren and laid waste, there will be few gardens in living earth that will bloom like your garden if you sprinkle this earth there. Then you may remember, Galadriel, and catch a glimpse far off of Lorien that you have seen only in our winter. For our spring and our summer are gone by, and they will never be seen on earth again, save in memory. Sam went red to the ears and muttered something inaudible as he clutched the box and bowed as well as he could. And what gift would a dwarf ask of the elves? Said Galadriel, spoken to Gimli. None, lady, answered Gimli. It is enough for me to have seen the lady of the Galathrin and to have heard her gentle words. Hear all ye elves, she cried to those about her. Let none say again that dwarves are grasping and ungracious. Yet surely, Gimli, son of Glowin, you desire something that I could give. Name it, I bid you. You shall not be the only guest without a gift. There is nothing, Lady Galadriel, said Gimli, bowing low and stammering. Nothing unless it might be, unless it is permitted to ask me to name a single strand of hair, which surpasses the gold of the earth as the stars surpass the gems of the mine. I do not ask for such a gift, but you commanded me to name my desire. The elves stirred and murmured with astonishment, and Celeborn gazed at the dwarf in wonder, but the lady smiled. It is said that the skill of the dwarves is in their hands rather than in their tongues, she said. Yet that is not true of Gimli, for none have ever made to me a request so bold and yet so courteous? And how shall I refuse, since I commanded him to speak? Tell me, what would you do with such a gift?
Treasure it, Queen,
He answered.
in memory of your words to me at our first meeting. And if ever I return to the smithies of my home, it shall be set in imperishable crystal to be an heirloom of my house and a pledge of goodwill between the mountain and the wood until the end of days.
Then the lady unbraided one of her long tresses and cut off 3 golden hairs and laid them in Gimli's hand. These words shall go with the gift, she said. I do not foretell, for all foretelling is now vain. On the one hand lies darkness, and on the other only hope. But if hope should not fail, then I say to you, Gimli, son of Glowin, that your hands shall flow with gold, and yet over you gold shall have no dominion. And you, Ring-bearer, she said, turning to Frodo, I come to you last, who are not last in my thoughts. For you I have prepared this. She held up a small crystal phial. It glittered as she moved it, and rays of white light sparkled in her air. In this phial, she said, is caught the light of Earendil's star, set amid the waters of my fountain. It will shine still brighter when night is about you. May it be a light to you in dark places when all other lights go out. Remember Galadriel and her mirror. Frodo took the phial, and for a moment, as it shone between them, he saw her again, standing like a queen, great and beautiful, no longer terrible. He bowed, but found no words to say. Now the lady arose, and Celeborn led them back to the hearth. A yellow noon lay on the green land of the tongue, and the water glittered with silver. All at last was made ready. The company took their places in the boats as before. Crying farewell, the elves of Lorien, with long grey poles, thrust them out into the flowing stream, and the rippling waters bore them slowly away. The travellers sat still, without moving or speaking. On the green bank, near to the very point of the tongue, the Lady Galadriel stood alone and silent. As they passed her, they turned, and their eyes watched her slowly floating away from them. For so it seemed to them. Lorien was slipping backward like a bright ship, masted with enchanted trees, sailing onto forgotten shores, while they sat helpless upon the margin of the grey and leafless world. Even as they gazed, the Silverlode passed out into the currents of the great river, and their boats turned and began to speed southward. Soon the white form of the lady was small and distant. She shone like a window of glass upon a far hill in a westering sun, or as a remote lake seen from a mountain, a crystal fallen in the lap of the land. Then it seemed to Frodo that she lifted her arms in a final farewell, and far, but piercing clear on the following wind, came the sound of her voice, singing. But now she sang in the ancient tongue of the elves beyond the sea, and he did not understand the words. Fair was the music, but it did not comfort him. Yet, as is the way of elvish words, they remained graven them, and long afterwards he interpreted them as well as he could. The language was that of elder song, and spoke of things little known on earth. Ai laurie lanta lassi surime, Jenny onuttime verama aldoron. Jenny velinte Julda avanie, mi oromadi lisse le ruvoreva, andune pella, vardo teluma, num luini jassen tintilla ieleni, o Mario aretari lirine, si mani ulmanin enquantua, ansi tentale vada, o io lo sei, Vefania Maria telentari ortane, a ilie tie undulave lungule, a sinda noriello caeta mornie, I falmalina imbenetta hissie, tuppa calla Kyrio mirio iale, si vanwa na Romello vanwa Vallema, Namari, nai hiru valie Vallema, nai elie hiruva Namari. Ah, the gold for the leaves in the wind. Long years numberless as the wings of trees. The years have passed like swift draughts of the sweet mead in lofty halls beyond the west, beneath the blue vaults of Vada, wherein the stars tremble in the song of her voice, holy and queenly. Who now shall refill the cup for them? For now the kindler, Vada, the queen of the stars, from Mount Everwhite has uplifted her hands like clouds, and all paths are drowned deep in shadow, and out of a grey country darkness lies on the foaming waves between us, and mist covers the jewels of Calakia forever. Now lost to those from the east, is Valimar. Farewell. Maybe thou shalt find Valimar. Maybe even thou shalt find it. Farewell. Vada is the name of that lady whom the elves in these lands of exile named Elbreth. Suddenly the river swept round a bend, and the banks rose upon either side, and the light of Lorien was hidden. To that fair land Frodo never came again. The travellers now turned their faces to the journey. The sun was before them, and their eyes were dazzled, for all were filled with tears. Gimli wept openly. I have looked the last upon that which was fairest, he said to Legolas, his companion. Henceforward, I will call nothing fair unless it be her gift. He put his hand to his breast. Tell me, Legolas, why did I come on this quest? Little did I know where the chief peril lay. Truly, Elrond spoke, saying that we could not foresee what we might meet upon our road. Torment in the dark was the danger that I feared, and it did not hold me back. But I would not have come had I known the danger of light and joy. Now I have taken my worst wound in this
parting, even if I were to go this night straight to the Dark Lord. Oh, alas, forgive me, son of Glowing. Nay, said Legolas, alas for us all, and for all that walk the world in these after days. For such is the way to find and lose, as it seems to those whose boat is on the running stream. But I count you blessed, Gimli, son of Glowing. For your loss you suffer of your own free will, and you might have chosen otherwise. But you have not forsaken your companions, and the least reward that you shall have is that the memory of lost Lorien shall remain ever clear and unstained in your heart, and shall neither fade nor grow stale. Maybe, said Gimli, and I thank you for your words. True words, doubtless, yet all such comfort is cold. Memory is not what the heart desires. It is only a mirror, be it clear as Keletsara. Or so says the heart of Gimli the Dwarf. Elves may see things otherwise. Indeed, I have heard that for them memory is more like to the waking world than to the dream. Not so for dwarves. But let us talk no more of it. Look to the boat. She is too low in the water with all this baggage. And the great river is swift. I do not wish to drown my grief in cold water. He took up a paddle and steered towards the western bank, following Aragorn's boat ahead, which had already moved out of the middle stream. So the company went on their long way, down the wide, hurrying waters borne ever southwards. Bearwoods stalked along either bank, and they could not see any glimpse of the lands behind. The breeze died away, and the river flowed without a sound. No voice of bird broke the silence. The sun grew misty as the day grew old, until it gleamed in a pale sky like a high white pearl. Then it faded into the west, and dusk came early, followed by a grey and starless night. Far into the dark, quiet hours they floated on, guiding their boats under the overhanging shadows of the western woods. Great trees passed by like ghosts, thrusting their twisty, thirsty roots through the mist down into the water. It was dreary and cold. Frodo sat and listened to the faint lap and gurgle of the river fretting among the trees and driftwood near the shore, until his head nodded and he fell into an uneasy sleep. Chapter 9. The Great River. Frodo was roused by Sam. He found that he was lying well wrapped under tall grey-skinned trees in a quiet corner of the woodlands on the west bank of the great river Andrew. He had slept the night away, and the grey of morning was dim among the bare branches. Gimli was busy with a small fire near at hand. They started again before the day was broad. Not that most of the company were eager to hurry southwards. They were content that the decision, which they must make at latest when they came to Valros and the Tinned Rock Isle, still lay some days ahead. And they let the river bear them on at its own pace, having no desire to hasten towards the perils that lay beyond, whichever course they took in the end. Aragorn let them drift with the stream as they wished, husbanding their strength against weariness to come. But he insisted that at least they should start early each day and journey on far into the evening, for he felt in his heart that time was pressing, and he feared that the Dark Lord had not been idle while they lingered in London. Nonetheless, they saw no sign of any enemy that day nor the next. The dull grey hours passed without event,
As the third day of their voyage wore on, the lands changed slowly. The trees thinned and then failed altogether. On the eastern bank to their left, they saw long, formless slopes stretching up and away towards the sky. Brown and withered they looked, as if fire had passed over them, leaving no living blade of green. An unfriendly waste without even a broken tree or a bold stone to relieve the emptiness. They had come to the brown lands that lay, vast and desolate, between the southern Mirkwood and the hills of the enemy. What pestilence or war or evil deed of the enemy had so blasted all that region? Even Aragorn could not tell. Upon the west to their right, the land was treeless also, but it was flat, and in many places green with wide plains of grass. On this side of the river they passed forests of great reeds, so tall that they shut out all view to the west, as the little boats went rustling by along their fluttering borders. Their dark, withered plumes bent and tossed in the light, cold airs, hissing softly and sadly. Here and there, through openings, Frodo could catch sudden glimpses of rolling meads, and far beyond them hills in the sunset, and away on the edge of sight, a dark line where marched the southernmost ranks of the Eastern Mountains. There was no sign of living, moving things save birds. Of these there were many, small fowl, whistling and piping in the reeds, but they were seldom seen. Once or twice the travellers heard the rush and whine of swan wings, and looking up they saw a great phalanx streaming along the sky. "Swans!" said Sam, "and mighty big ones too." "Yes," said Aragorn, "and they are black swans." "How wide and empty and mournful all this country is," said Frodo. "I always imagined that as one journeyed south it got warmer and merrier until winter was left behind forever." "We have not journeyed far south yet," answered Aragorn. "It is still winter, and we are far from sea. Here the world is cold until the sudden spring, and we may yet have snow here. Far away down in the bay of Belfalas, to which Anduin runs, it is warm and merry, maybe, or would be, but for the enemy. But here, we are not above 60 leagues, I guess, south of the south farthing away in your shire, hundreds of long miles yonder. You are looking now southwest across the north plains of the Riddermark, Rohan, the land of the horse lords. Ere long, we shall come to the mouth of the Limelight that runs down from Fangorn to join the great river. That is the north boundary of Rohan, and of old all that lay between Limelight and the White Mountains belonged to the Rohirrim. It is a rich and pleasant land, and its grass has no rival. But in these evil days, folk do not dwell by the river or ride often to its shores. Anduin is wide, yet the orcs can shoot their arrows far across the stream, and of late, it is said, they have dared to cross the water and raid the herds and studs of Rohan. Sam looked from bank to bank uneasily. The trees had seemed hostile before, as if they harbored secret eyes and lurking dangers. Now, he wished that the trees were still there. He felt that the company was too naked, afloat in little open boats in the midst of shelterless lands, and on a river that was the frontier of war. In the next day or two, as they went on, borne steadily southwards, this feeling of insecurity grew on all the company. For a whole day, they took to their paddles and hastened forward. The banks slid by. Soon the river broadened and grew more shallow. Long stony beaches lay upon the east, and there were gravel shoals in the water, so that careful steering was needed. The brown lands rose into bleak wolds over which flowed a chill air from the east. On the other side, the meads had become rolling downs of withered grass amidst a land of fen and tussock. Frodo shivered, thinking of the lawns and fountains, the clear sun, and gentle rains of Lothlorien. There was little speech and no laughter in any of the boats. Each member of the company was busy with his own thoughts. The heart of Legolas was running under the stars of a summer night in some northern glade amid the beechwoods. Gimli was fingering gold in his mind and wondering if it were fit to be wrought into the housing of the lady's gift. Merry and Pippin in the middle boat were ill at ease, for Boromir sat muttering to himself, sometimes biting his nails as if some restlessness or doubt consumed him, sometimes seizing a paddle and driving the boat close behind Aragorn's. Then Pippin, who sat in the bow looking back, caught a queer gleam in his eye as he peered forward, gazing at Frodo. Sam had long ago made up his mind that, though boats were maybe not as dangerous as he'd been brought up to believe, they were far more uncomfortable than even he had imagined. He was cramped and miserable, having nothing to do but stare at the winter lands crawling by and the grey water on either side of him. Even when the paddles were in use, they did not trust Sam with one. As dusk drew down on the fourth day, he was looking back over the bowed heads of Frodo and Aragorn and the following boats. He was drowsy and longed for camp and the feel of earth under his toes. Suddenly, something caught his sight. At first he stared at it listlessly. Then he sat up and rubbed his eyes, but when he looked again, he could not see it anymore. That night, they camped on a small eight close to the western bank. Sam lay rolled in blankets beside Frodo. "I had a funny dream an hour or two before we stopped, Mr. Frodo," he said. "Or maybe it wasn't a dream. Funny it was anyway." "Well, what was it?" said Frodo, knowing that Sam would not settle down until he had told his tale, whatever it was. "I haven't seen or thought of anything to make me smile since we left Lothlorien." "It wasn't funny that way, Mr. Frodo. It was queer. All wrong if it wasn't a dream, and you had best hear it. It was like this. I saw a log with eyes." "The log's all right," said Frodo. "There are many in the river, but leave out the eyes." "That I won't," said Sam. "It was the eyes that made me sit up, so to speak.
Not sure
I
what
saw
it is.
what I took to be a log floating along in the half-light behind Gimli's boat, but I didn't give much heed to it. Then it seemed as if the log was slowly catching us up. And that was peculiar, as you might say, seeing as we were all floating on the stream together. Just then, I saw the eyes, two pale sort of points, shiny like, on a hump at the near end of the log. What's more, it wasn't a log, for it had paddle feet, like a swan's almost, only they seemed bigger.
I'm not sure what it could be.
In and out of the water. That's when I sat right up
Tango one
and
down.
rubbed my eyes, meaning to
I'll
give a
burn my
shout,
blanket.
if it was still there when I had rubbed the drowse out of my head. For the whatever it was coming along fast now and getting close behind Gimli. But whether those two lamps spotted me moving and staring, or whether I came to my senses, I don't know. When I looked again, it wasn't there. Yet I think I caught a glimpse with the tail of my eye, as the saying is, of something dark shooting under the shadow of the bank. I couldn't see no more eyes, though.
Is that even better that way?
I said to myself, "Dreaming again, Sam Gamgee," I said. And I said no more just then, but I've been thinking since, and now I'm not so sure. What do you make of it, Mr. Frodo? "I should make nothing of it but a log and the dusk and sleep in your eyes, Sam," said Frodo. "If this was the first time that
It might have been because I had my drawer pulled out a little bit and I had a balance shade right there.
away
guess
that
when I
north
sit in
before
it
we
on
reached Lorien.
just a flat
And I
surface is
saw a
probably better.
strange creature with eyes climbing to the flat that night. Haldir saw it too. And do you remember the report of the elves that went after the orc band? Ah, said Sam. I do, and I remember more too. I don't like my thoughts, but thinking of one thing and another, and Mr. Bilbo's stories and all, I fancy I could put a name on the creature. I guess. A nasty name. Gollum, maybe? Yes, that is what I have feared for some time, said Frodo. Ever since the night on the Flet, I suppose he was lurking in Moria and picked up our trail then. But I hoped that our stay in Lorien would throw him off the scent again. The miserable creature must have been hiding in the woods by the Silverlode, watching us start off. That's about it, said Sam. We'd better be a bit more watchful ourselves, or we'll feel some nasty fingers round our necks one of these nights if we ever wake up to feel anything. And that's what I was leading up to. No need to trouble Strider or the others tonight. I'll keep watch. I can sleep tomorrow, being no more than luggage in a boat, as you might say. I might, said Frodo, and I might say luggage with eyes. You shall watch, but only if you promise to wake me halfway towards morning, if nothing happens before then. In the dead hours, Frodo came out of a deep, dark sleep to find Sam shaking him. It's a shame to wake you, whispered Sam, but that's what you said. There was nothing to tell, or not much. I thought I heard some soft plashing and a sniffing noise a while back, but you hear a lot of such queer sounds by a river at night. He lay down, and Frodo sat up, huddled in his blankets, and fought off his sleep. Minutes or hours passed slowly, and nothing happened. Frodo was just yielding to the temptation to lie down again when a dark shape, hardly visible, floated close to one of the moored boats. A long, whitish hand could be dimly seen as it shot out and grabbed the gunwale. Two pale, lamp-like eyes shone coldly as they peered inside, and then they lifted and gazed up at Frodo on the eight. They were not more than a yard or two away, and Frodo heard the soft hiss of intaken breath. He stood up, drawing Sting from its sheath, and faced the eyes. Immediately their light was shut off. There was another hiss and a splash, and the dark log shape shot away downstream into the night. Aragorn stirred in his sleep, turned over and sat up. What is it? He whispered, springing up and coming to Frodo. I felt something in my sleep. Why have you drawn your sword? Gollum, answered Frodo, or at least so I guess. Ah, said Aragorn. So you know about our little footpad, do you? He padded after us all through Moria and right down to Nimrodel. Since we took to boats, he has been lying on a log and paddling with hands and feet. I've tried to catch him once or twice at night, but he is slyer than a fox and as slippery as a fish. I hope the river boy can beat him, but he is too clever a waterman. We shall have to try going faster tomorrow. You lie down now, and I will keep watch for what is left of the night. I wish I could lay my hands on the wretch. We might make him useful, but if I cannot, we shall have to try and lose him. He is very dangerous. Quite apart from murder by night on his own account, he may put any enemy that is about on our track. The night passed without Gollum showing so much as a shadow again. After that, the company kept a sharp lookout, but they saw no more of Gollum while the voyage lasted. If he was still following, he was very wary and cunning. At Aragorn's bidding, they paddled now for long spells, and the banks went swiftly by. But they saw little of the country, for they journeyed mostly by night and twilight, resting by day, and lying as hidden as the land allowed. In this way the time passed without event until the seventh day. The weather was still grey and overcast, with wind from the east, but as evening drew into night, the sky away westward cleared, and pools of faint light, yellow and pale green, opened under the grey shores of cloud. There the white rind of the new moon could be seen glimmering in the remote lakes. Sam looked at it and puckered his brows. The next day, the country on either side began to change rapidly. The banks began to rise and grow stony. Soon they were passing through a hilly, rocky land, and on both shores there were steep slopes buried in deep breaks of thorn and sloe, tangled with brambles and creepers. Behind them stood low, crumbling cliffs and chimneys of grey, weathered stone, dark with ivy, and beyond these again there rose high ridges crowned with wind-writhen firs. They were drawing near to the grey hill country of Emin, the southern march of Wilderland. There were many birds about the cliffs and the rock chimneys, and all day, high in the air, flocks of birds had been circling, black against the pale sky. As they lay in their camp that day, Aragorn watched the flights doubtfully, wondering if Gollum had been doing some mischief, and the news of their voyage was now moving in the wilderness. Later, as the sun was setting, and the company was stirring and getting ready to start again, he descried a dark spot against the fading light. A great bird, high and far off, now wheeling, now flying on slowly southwards. "What is that, Nicholas?" he asked, pointing to the northern sky. "Is it, as I think, an eagle?" "Yes," said Nicholas. "It is an eagle, a hunting eagle. I wonder what that forebodes. It is far from the mountains." "We will not start until it is fully dark," said Aragorn. The 8th night of their journey came. It was silent and windless. The grey east wind had passed away. The thin crescent of the moon had fallen early into the pale sunset. But the sky was clear above, and though far away in the south, there were great ranges of cloud that still shone faintly. In the west, stars glinted bright. "Come," said Aragorn, "we will venture one more journey by night. We are coming to the reaches of the river that I do not know well, for I have never journeyed by water in these parts before, not between here and the rapids of San Gebir. But if I am right in my reckoning, those are still many miles ahead. Still, there are
Do this one
dangerous
flight
places
there.
even before we come
Take a
there.
break, do a
Rocks and
dab,
stony lakes.
smoke some double hash.
We must keep a sharp watch and not try to paddle swiftly." To Sam, in the leading boat, was given the task of watchman. He lay forward, peering into the gloom. The night grew dark, but the stars above were strangely bright, and there was a glimmer on the face of the river. It was close on midnight, and they had been drifting for some while, hardly using the paddles, when suddenly Sam cried out. Only a few yards ahead, dark shapes loomed up in the stream, and he heard the swirl of racing water. There was a swift current which swung left towards the eastern shore where the channel was clear. As they were swept aside, the travellers could see, now very close, the pale foam of the river lashing against sharp rocks that were thrust out far into the stream like a ridge of teeth. The boats were all huddled together. "Hoy there, Aragorn!" shouted Boromir, as his boat
Elbow
bumped
him in
into
the face now.
"This is madness. We cannot dare the rapids by night. But no boat can live in San Gebir, be it night or
Turning
day."
his face up with the
Back,
elbows to
back.
his forehead.
cried
You're
Aragorn.
leaving a
"Turn,
bloody pulp.
turn if you can." He drove his paddle into the water, trying to hold the boat and bring it round. "I am out of my reckoning," he said to Frodo. "I did not know that we had come so far. Anduin flows faster than I thought. San Gebir must be close at hand already." With great efforts, they checked the boats and slowly brought them about. But at first they could make only small headway against the current, and all the time they were carried nearer and nearer to the eastern bank. Now dark and ominous, it loomed up in the
Time to
night.
buddy him up some more.
"All together, paddle!" shouted Boromir. "Paddle, or we shall be driven on the shoals!" Even as he spoke, Frodo felt the keel beneath him grate upon stone. At that moment there was a twang of bowstrings. Several arrows whistled over them, and some fell among them. One smote Frodo between the shoulders, and he lurched forward with a cry, letting go his paddle. But the arrow fell back, foiled by his hidden coat of mail. Another passed through Aragorn's hood, and a third stood fast in the gunwale of the second boat, close by Merry's hand. Sam thought he could glimpse black figures running to and fro upon the long shingle banks that lay under the eastern shore. They seemed very near. "Years," said Legolas, falling into his own tongue. "Orcs!" cried Gimli. "Gollum's doing, I'll be bound," said Sam to Frodo. "And a nice place to choose, too. The river seems set on taking us right into their arms." They all leaned forward, straining at the paddles. Even Sam took a hand. Every moment they expected to feel the bite of black-feathered arrows. Many whined overhead or struck the water nearby, but there were no more hits. It was dark, but not too dark for the night eyes of orcs, and in the star glimmer they must have offered their cunning foes some mark, unless it was that the grey cloaks of Lorien and the grey timber of the elf-wrought boats defeated the malice of the archers of Mordor. Stroke by stroke, they laboured on. In the darkness, it was hard to be sure that they were indeed moving at all. But slowly, the swirl of the water grew less, and the shadow of the eastern bank faded back into the night. At last, as far as they could judge, they had reached the middle of the stream again, and had driven their boats back some distance above the jutting rocks. Then, half turning, they thrust them with all their strength towards the western shore. Under the shadow of bushes leaning out over the water, they halted and drew breath. Legolas laid down his paddle and took up the bow that he had brought from Lorien. Then he sprang ashore and climbed a few paces up the bank. Stringing the bow and fitting an arrow, he turned, peering back over the river into the darkness. Across the water there were shrill cries, but nothing could be seen. Frodo looked up at the elf standing tall above him as he gazed into the night, seeking a mark to shoot at. His head was dark, crowned with sharp white stars that glittered in the black pools of the sky behind. But now, rising and sailing up from the south, the great clouds advanced, sending out dark outriders into the starry fields. A sudden dread fell on the company. "Elbereth, Gilthoniga," sighed Legolas as he looked up. Even as he did so, a dark shape, like a cloud and yet not a cloud, for it moved far more swiftly, came out of the blackness in the south and sped towards the company, blotting out all light as it approached. Soon it appeared as a great winged creature, blacker than the pits in the night. Fierce voices rose up to greet it from across the water. Frodo felt a sudden chill running through him and clutching at his heart. There was a deadly cold, like the memory of an old wound in his shoulder. He crouched down as if to hide. Suddenly, the great bow of Lorien sang, shrill, and the arrow from the elven string. Frodo looked up. Almost above him, a winged shape swerved. There was a harsh, croaking scream as it fell out of the air, vanishing down into the gloom of the eastern shore.
The sky was clean again. There was a tumult of many voices far away, cursing and wailing in the darkness, and then silence. Neither shaft nor cry came again from the east that night. After a while, Aragorn led the boats back upstream. They felt their way along the water's edge for some distance until they found a small, shallow bay. A few low trees grew there close to the water, and behind them rose a steep, rocky bank. Here the company decided to stay and await the dawn. It was useless to attempt to move further by night. They made no camp and lit no fire, but lay huddled in the boats, moored close together. Praised be the bow of Galadriel and the hand and eye of Legolas, said Gimli, as he munched a wafer of lemmas. That was a mighty shot in the dark, my friend. But who can say what it hit? Said Legolas. I cannot, said Gimli, but I am glad that the shadow came no nearer. I liked it not at all. Too much it reminded me of the shadow in Moria, the shadow of the Balrog, he ended in a whisper. It was not a Balrog, said Frodo, still shivering with the chill that had come upon him. It was something colder. I think it was... Then he paused and fell silent. What do you think? Asked Boromir eagerly, leaning from his boat, as if he was trying to catch a glimpse of Frodo's face. I think... No, I will not say, answered Frodo. Whatever it was, its fall has dismayed our enemies. So it seems, said Aragorn. Yet, where they are and how many and what they will do next, we do not know. This night we must all be sleepless. Dark hides us now, but what the day will show, who can tell? Have your weapons close to hand. Sam sat tapping the hilt of his sword as if he were counting on his fingers and looking up at the sky. Very strange, he murmured. The moon's the same in the Shire and in Wilderland. Well, it ought to be, but either it's out of its running, or I'm all wrong in my reckoning. You'll remember, Mr. Frodo, the moon was waning as we lay on the flat up in that tree. A week from the full, I reckon. And we'd been a week on the way last night, when up pops a new moon, as thin as a nail paring. As if we had never stayed no time in the Elvish country. Well, I can remember 3 nights there for certain, and I seem to remember several more. But I would take my oath it was never a whole month. Anyone would think that time did not count in there. And perhaps that was the way of it, said Frodo. In that land, maybe we were in a time that has elsewhere long gone by. It was not, I think, until Silverlode bore us back to Anduin that we returned to the time that flows through mortal lands to the Great Sea. And I don't remember any moon, either new or old, in Caras Galadhon. Only stars by night and sun by day. Legolas stirred in his boat. Nay, time does not tarry, ever, he said. But change and growth is not in all things and places alike. For the elves the world moves, and it moves both very swift and very slow. Swift because they themselves change little and all else fleets by. It is a grief to them. Slow because they need not count the running years, not for themselves. The passing seasons are but ripples ever repeated in the long, long stream. Yet beneath the sun all things must wear to an end at last. But the wearing is slow in Lorien, said Frodo. The power of the lady is on it. Rich are the hours, though short they seem, in Caras Galadhon, where Galadriel wields the elven ring. That should not have been said,
Outside Lorien. Not even to me, said Aragorn. Speak no more of it. But so it is, Sam. In that land you lost your count. There time flowed swiftly by us. As for the elves, the old moon passed, and a new moon waxed and waned in the world outside, while we tarried there. And yestereve, a new moon came again. Winter is nearly gone. Time flows on to a spring of little hope. The night passed silently. No voice or call was heard again across the water. The travelers, huddled in their boats, felt the changing of the weather. The air grew warm and very still under the great moist clouds that had floated up from the south and the distant seas. The rushing of the river over the rocks of the rapids seemed to grow louder and closer. The twigs of the trees above them began to drip. When the day came, the mood of the world about them had become soft and sad. Slowly the dawn grew to a pale light, diffused and shadowless. There was mist on the river, and white fog swathed the shore. The far bank could not be seen. "We can't avoid fog," said Sam, "but this seems to be a lucky one. Now perhaps we can get away without those cursed goblins seeing us." "Perhaps so," said Aragorn. "But it will be hard to find the path unless the fog lifts a little later on. And we must find the path if we are to pass San Gebir and come to the Emin Muir. I do not see why we should pass the rapids or follow the river any further," said Boromir. "If the Emin Muir lie before us, then we can abandon these cockle bolts and strike westward and southward until we come to the Entwash and cross into my own land." "We can, if we are making for Minas Tirith," said Aragorn, "but that is not yet agreed, and such a course may be more perilous than it sounds. The Vale of Entwash is flat and fenny, and fog is a deadly peril there for those on foot and laden. I would not abandon our boats until we must. The river is at least a path that cannot be missed." "But the enemy holds the eastern bank," objected Boromir. "And even if you pass the gates of Argonath and come unmolested to the Tindrock, what will you do then? Leap down the falls and land in the marshes?" "No," answered Aragorn. "Say rather that we will bear our boats by the ancient way to Raros Foot, and there take to the water again. Do you not know, Boromir, or do you choose to forget the North Stair and the high seat upon Amon Hen that were made in the days of the great kings? I at least have a mind to stand in that high place again, before I decide my further course. There, maybe, we shall see some sign that will guide us." Boromir held out long against this choice, but when it became plain that Frodo would follow Aragorn wherever he went, he gave in. "It is not the way of the men of Minas Tirith to desert their friends at me," he said. "And you will need my strength if ever you are to reach the Tindrock. To the Tall Isle I will go, but no further. There I shall turn to my home, alone if my help has not earned the reward of any companionship." The day was now growing, and the fog had lifted a little. It was decided that Aragorn and Legolas should at once go forward along the shore while the others remained by the boats. Aragorn hoped to find some way by which they could carry both their boats and their baggage to the smoother water beyond the rapids. "Boats of the elves would not sink, maybe," he said. "But that does not say that we should come through San Gebir alive. None have ever done so yet. No road was made by the men of Gondor in this region, for even in their great days, their realm did not reach up Anduin.
beyond the Enimbuya. But there is a portage way somewhere on the western shore, if I can find it. It cannot yet have perished, for light boats used to journey out of Wilderland down to Osgiliath, and still
Down right in front
did
of
so
everyone.
until a few years ago when the orcs of Mordor began to multiply. Seldom in my life has any boat come out of the north, and the orcs prowl on the east shore, said Boromir. If you go forward, peril will grow with every mile, even if you find a path. Peril lies ahead on every southward road, answered Aragorn. Wait for us one day. If we do not return in that time, you will know that evil has indeed befallen us. Then you must take a new leader and follow him as best you can. It was with a heavy heart that Frodo saw Aragorn and Legolas climb the steep bank and vanish into the mists. But his fears proved groundless. Only 2 or 3 hours had passed, and it was barely midday when the shadowy shapes of the explorers appeared again. All is well, said Aragorn as he clambered down the bank. There is a track, and it leads to a good landing that is still serviceable. The distance is not great. The head of the rapids is but half a mile below us, and they are little more than a mile long. Not far beyond them, the stream becomes clear and smooth again, though it runs swiftly. Our hardest task will be to get our boats and baggage to the old portage way. We have found it, but it lies well back from the waterside here and runs under the lee of a rock wall, a furlong or more from the shore. We did not find where the northward landing lies. If it still remains, we must have passed it yesterday night. We might labor far upstream and yet miss it in the fog. I fear we must leave the river now and make for the portage way as best we can from here. That would not be easy, even if we were all men, said Boromir. As we are, we will try
Have
it.
to take a
Said
little breather
Aragorn.
before
Aye, we will.
we start
said
round
Gimli.
2.
The legs of men will lag on a rough road, while a dwarf goes on, be the burden twice his own weight, Master Boromir. The task proved hard indeed, yet in the end it was done. The goods were taken out of the boats and brought to the top of the bank, where there was a level space. Then the boats were drawn out of the water and carried up. They were far less heavy than any had expected. Of what tree growing in the elvish country they were made, not even Legolas knew. But the wood was tough and yet strangely light. Merry and Pippin alone could carry their boat with ease along the flat. Nonetheless, it needed the strength of the 2 men to lift and haul them over the ground that the company was across. It sloped up, away from the river, a tumbled waste of grey limestone boulders with many hidden holes shrouded with weeds and bushes. There were thickets of brambles and sheer dells, and here and there boggy pools fed by waters trickling from the terraces further inland. One by one, Boromir and Aragorn carried the boats, while the others toiled and scrambled after them with the baggage. At last, all was removed and laid on the portage way. Then, with little further hindrance, save from sprawling briars and many fallen stones, they moved forward altogether. Fog still hung in veils upon the crumbling rock wall, and to their left, mist shrouded the river. They could hear it, rushing and foaming over the sharp shelves and stony teeth of San Gebir, but they could not see it. Twice they made the journey before all was brought safe to the southern landing. There the portage way, turning back to the waterside, ran gently down to the shallow edge of a little pool. It seemed to have been scooped in the riverside, not by hand, but by the water swirling down from San Gebir against a low pier of rock that jutted out some way into the stream. Beyond it, the shore rose sheer, into a grey cliff, and there was no further passage for those on foot. Already the short afternoon was past, and a dim, cloudy dusk was closing in. They sat beside the water listening to the confused rush and roar of the rapids hidden in the mist. They were tired and sleepy, and their hearts were as gloomy as the dying day. "Well, here we are, and here we must pass another night," said Boromir. "We need sleep, and even if Aragorn had a mind to pass the gates of Argonath by night, we are all too tired, except no doubt our sturdy dwarf." Gimli made no reply. He was nodding as he sat. "Let us rest as much as we can now," said Aragorn. "Tomorrow we must journey by day again. Unless the weather changes once more and cheats us, we shall have a good chance of slipping through unseen by any eyes on the eastern shore. But tonight two must watch together in turns, 3 hours off and 1 on guard." Nothing happened that night worse than a brief drizzle of rain an hour before dawn. As soon as it was fully light, they started. Already the fog was thinning. They kept as close as they could to the western side, and they could see the dim shapes of the low cliffs rising ever higher, shadowy walls with their feet in the hurrying river. In the mid-morning, the clouds drew down lower, and it began to rain heavily. They drew the skin covers over their boats to prevent them from being flooded, and drifted on. Little could be seen before them or about them through the grey, falling curtains. The rain, however, did not last long. Slowly, the sky above grew lighter, and then suddenly the clouds broke, and their draggled fringes trailed away northward up the river.
Oh, that
The
dab
fogs
that
and
was a brutal
mists
dab.
were gone.
But let me get past
Before the
this tree
travellers
and
lay a wide ravine
smoke a little something.
with great rocky sides to which clung, upon shelves and in narrow crevices, a few thorn trees. The channel grew narrower and the river swifter. Now they were speeding along with little hope of stopping or turning, whatever they might need to head. Over them was a lane of pale blue sky. Around them, the dark, overshadowed river, and before them, black, shutting out the sun, the hills of Emin Muir, in which no opening could be seen. Frodo, peering forward, saw in the distance 2 great rocks approaching, like great pinnacles or pillars of stone, it seemed. Tall and sheer and ominous they stood upon either side of the stream. A narrow gap appeared between them, and the river swept the boats towards it. "Behold the Argonath, the pillars of the kings," cried Aragorn. "We shall pass them soon. Keep the boats in line and as far apart as you can. Hold the middle of the stream." As Frodo was borne towards them, the great pillars rose like towers to meet him. Giants, they seemed to him, vast, grey figures, silent but threatening. Then he saw that they were indeed shaped and fashioned. The craft and power of old had wrought upon them, and still they preserve, through the suns and rains of forgotten years, the mighty likenesses in which they had been hewn. Upon great pedestals founded in the deep waters stood 2 great kings of stone. Still with blurred eyes and crannied brows, they frowned upon the north. The left hand of each was raised palm outwards in gesture of warning. In each right hand there was an axe. Upon each head there was a crumbling helm and crown. Great power and majesty they still wore, the silent wardens of a long-vanished kingdom. All
and fear fell upon Frodo, and he cowered down, shutting his eyes and not daring to look up as the boat drew near. Even Boromir bowed his head as the boats whirled by, frail and fleeting as little leaves under the enduring shadow of the sentinels of Númenor. So they passed into the dark chasm of the gates. Sheer rose the dreadful cliffs to unguessed heights on either side. Far off was the dim sky, the black waters roared and echoed, and a wind screamed over them. Frodo, crouching over his knees, heard Sam in front muttering and groaning. What a place! What a horrible place! Just let me get out of this boat, and I will never wet my toes in a puddle again, let alone the river. Fear not, said a strange voice behind him. Frodo turned and saw Strider, and yet not Strider, for the weather-worn ranger was no longer there. In the stern sat Aragorn, son of Arathorn, proud and erect, guiding the boat with skillful strokes. His hood was cast back, and his dark hair was blowing in the wind. A light was in his eyes, a king returning from exile to his own land. Fear not, he said. Long have I desired to look upon the likenesses of Isildur and Anarion, my sires of old. Under their shadow, Elessar, the Elfstone son of Arathorn, of the house of Valandil, Isildur's son, heir of Elendil, has naught to dread. Then the light of his eyes faded, and he spoke to himself. But the Gandalf again. How my heart yearns for Minas Tirith.
Now after this match, we'll start round 2.
But whither now shall I go? The chasm was long and dark and filled with the noise of wind and rushing water and echoing stone. It bent somewhat towards the west, so that at first all was dark ahead. But soon Frodo saw a tall gap of light before him, ever growing. Swiftly it drew near, and suddenly the boats shot through, out into a wide, clear light. The sun, already long fallen from the noon, was shining in a windy sky. The pent waters spread out into a long, oval lake, pale, Nin Hithoil, fenced by steep grey hills whose sides were clad with trees, but their heads were bare, cold gleaming in the sunlight. At the far southern end rose 3 peaks. The midmost stood somewhat forward from the others and sundered from them, an island in the waters, about which the flowing river flung pale, shimmering arms. Distant but deep, there came up on the wind a roaring sound, like the roll of thunder heard far away. Behold, tall Brandir, said Aragorn, pointing south to the tall peak. Upon the left stands Amon Lor, and upon the right is Amon Hen, the hills of hearing and of sight. In the days of the great kings, there were high seats upon them, and watch was kept there. But it is said that no foot of man or beast has ever been set upon tall Brandir. Ere the shade of night falls, we shall come to them. I hear the endless voice of Raros calling. The company rested now for a while, drifting south on the current that flowed through the middle of the lake. They ate some food,
Muddied him up
and then
with
they
the
took to their
elbows,
paddles
gashed his
and
forehead
hastened on
open,
their
and
way.
then
The
went through
sides of
him.
the westward hills
Choked him
fell into shadow, and the sun grew round and red.
Had to make himself
Here
a
and
first,
there,
though.
a misty star peered out. The three peaks loomed before them, darkling in the twilight. Rauros was roaring with a great voice. Already, night was laid on the flowing waters when the travelers came at last under the shadow of the hills. The 10th day of their journey was over. Wilderland was behind them. They could go no further without choice between the East Way and the West. The last stage of the quest was before them. Chapter 10. The Breaking of the Fellowship. Aragorn led them to the right arm of the river. Here, upon its western side, under the shadow of Tol Brandir, a green lawn ran down to the water from the feet of Amon Hen. Behind it rose the first gentle slopes of the hill, clad with trees, and trees marched away westward along the curving shores of the lake. A little spring fell tumbling down and fed the grass. "Here we will rest tonight," said Aragorn. "This is the lawn of Path Yala, a fair place in the summer days of old. Let us hope that no evil has yet come here." They drew up their boats on the green banks, and beside them they made their camp. They set a watch, but had no sight nor sound of their enemies. If Gollum had contrived to follow them, he remained unseen and unheard. Nonetheless, as the night wore on, Aragorn grew uneasy, tossing often in his sleep and waking. In the small hours he got up and came to Frodo, whose turn it was to watch. "Why are you waking?" asked Frodo. "It is not your watch." "I don't know," answered Aragorn, "but a shadow and a threat has been growing in my sleep. It would be well to draw your sword." "Why?" said Frodo. "Our enemies at hand." "Let us see what sting they show," answered Aragorn. Frodo then drew the elf blade from its sheath. To his dismay, the edges gleamed dimly in the night. "Orcs," he said, "not very near, and yet too near it seems." "I feared as much," said Aragorn, "but maybe they are not on this side of the river. The light of Sting is faint, and it may point to no more than spies of Mordor roaming on the slopes of Amon Lor. I have never heard before of orcs upon Amon Hen. Yet who knows what may happen in these evil days, now that Minas Tirith no longer holds secure the passages of Anduin. We must go warily tomorrow." The day came like fire and smoke. Low in the east there were black bars of cloud, like the fumes of a great burning. The rising sun lit them from beneath with flames of murky red, but soon it climbed above them into a clear sky. The summit of Tol Brandir was tipped with gold. Frodo looked out eastward and gazed at the tall island. Its sides sprang sheer out of the running water. High up above the tall cliffs were steep slopes upon which trees climbed, mounting one head above another, and above them again were grey faces of inaccessible rock, crowned by a great spire of stone. Many birds were circling about it, but no sign of other living things could be seen. When they had eaten, Aragorn called the company together. "The day has come at last," he said. "The day of choice which we have long delayed. What shall now become of our company that has travelled so far in fellowship? Shall we turn west with Boromir and go to the wars of Gondor, or turn east to the fear and shadow? Or shall we break our fellowship and go this way and that as each may choose? Whatever we do must be done soon."
We cannot long hold here. The enemy is on the eastern shore, we know. But I fear that the orcs may already be on this side of the water. There was a long silence in which no one spoke or moved. Well, Frodo, said Aragorn at last, I fear that the burden is laid upon you. You are the bearer appointed by the council. Your own way you alone can choose. In this matter I cannot advise you. I am not Gandalf, and though I have tried to bear his part, I do not know what design or hope he had for this hour, if indeed he had any. Most likely it seems that if he were here, now the choice would still wait on you. Such is your fate. Frodo did not answer at once. Then he spoke, slowly. I know that haste is needed, yet I cannot choose. The burden is heavy. Give me an hour longer and I will speak. Let me be alone. Aragorn looked at him with kindly pity. Very well, Frodo, son of Drogo, he said. You shall have an hour, and you shall be alone. We will stay here for a while, but do not stray far or out of call. Frodo sat for a moment with his head bowed. Sam, who had been watching his master with great concern, shook his head and muttered, Plain as a pikestaff it is. It's no good Sam Gandhi putting in his spoke just now. Presently, Frodo got up and walked away. And Sam saw that while the others restrained themselves and did not stare at him, the eyes of Boromir followed Frodo intently until he passed out of sight in the trees at the foot of Amon Hen. Wandering aimlessly at first in the wood, Frodo found that his feet were leading him up towards the slopes of the hill. He came to a path, the dwindling ruins of a road of long ago. In steep places, stairs of stone had been hewn, but now they were cracked and worn and split by the roots of trees. For some while he climbed, not caring which way he went, until he came to a grassy place. Rowan trees grew about him, and in the midst was a wide, flat stone. The little upland lawn was open on the east, and was filled now with the early sunlight. Frodo halted and looked out over the river far below him to Tol Brandir and the birds wheeling in the great gulf of air between him and the untrodden isle. The voice of Rauros was a mighty roaring mingled with a deep throbbing boom. He sat down upon the stone and cupped his chin with his hands, staring eastwards, seeing little with his eyes. All that had happened since Bilbo left the Shire was passing through his mind, and he recalled and pondered everything that he could remember of Gandalf's words. Time went on, and still he was no nearer to a choice. Suddenly he awoke in his thoughts. A strange feeling came to him, that something was behind him, that unfriendly eyes were upon him. He sprang up and turned, but all that he saw to his surprise was Boromir, and his face was smiling and kind. I was afraid for you, Frodo, he said, coming forward. If Aragorn is right and orcs are near, then none of us should wander alone, you least of all. So much depends on you. And my heart, too, is heavy. May I stay now and talk for a while, since I have found you? It would comfort me. Where there are so many, all speech becomes a debate without end, but two together may perhaps find wisdom. You are kind, answered Frodo, but I do not think that any speech will help me. For I know what I should do, but I am afraid of doing it, Boromir. Afraid.
stood silent. Rauros roared endlessly on. The wind murmured in the branches of the trees. Frodo shivered. Suddenly Boromir came and sat beside him. "Are you sure that you do not suffer needlessly?" he said. "I wish to help you. You need counsel in your hard choice. Will you not take mine?" "I think I know already what counsel you would give, Boromir," said Frodo, "and it would seem like wisdom, but for the warning of my heart." "Warning? Warning against what?" said Boromir sharply. "Against delay. Against the way that seems easier. Against refusal of the burden that is laid on me. Against, well, if it must be said, against trust in the strength and truth of men. Yet that strength has long protected you, far away in your little country, though you knew it not. I do not doubt
I gotta
the
fight this
valor
last
of your
match. I'm
people,
sorry. This guy was just
but the
talking
world
shit.
is changing. The walls of Minas Tirith may be strong, but they are not strong enough. If they fail, what then? We shall fall in battle valiantly. Yet there is still hope that they will not fail. No hope while the ring lasts, said Frodo. "Ah, the ring," said Boromir, his eyes lighting. "The ring. Is it not a strange fate that we should suffer so much fear and doubt for so small a thing? So small a thing? And I have seen it only for an instant in the House of Elrond. Could I not have a sight of it again?" Frodo looked up. His heart went suddenly cold. He caught the strange gleam in Boromir's eyes, yet his face was still kind and friendly. "It is best that it should lie hidden," he answered. "As you wish. I care not," said Boromir. "Yet, may I not even speak of it? For you seem ever to think only of its power in the hands of the enemy, of its evil uses, not of its good. The world is changing, you say. Minas Tirith will fall if the ring lasts. But why? Certainly, if the ring were with the enemy. But why if it were with us? Were you not at the council?"
I go
answered
go to
Frodo,
another
"because
training week.
we cannot use it, and what is done with it turns to evil." Boromir got up and walked about impatiently. "So you go on," he cried. "Gandalf, Elrond, all these folk have taught you to say so. For themselves they may be right. These elves and half-elves and wizards, they would come to grief perhaps, yet often I doubt if they are wise, and not merely timid. But each to his own kind. True-hearted men, they will not be corrupted. We of Minas Tirith have been staunch through long years of trial. We do not desire the power of wizard lords, only strength to defend ourselves, strength in a just cause. And behold, in our need, chance brings to light the ring of power. It is a gift, I say, a gift to the foes of Mordor. It is mad not to use it, to use the power of the enemy against him. The fearless, the ruthless, these alone will achieve victory. What could not a warrior do in this war? A great leader? What could not Aragorn do? Or if he refuses, why not Boromir? The ring would give me power of command. How I would drive the hosts of Mordor, and all men would flock to my banner." Boromir strode up and down, speaking ever more loudly. Almost he seemed to have forgotten Frodo, while his talk dwelt on walls and weapons and the mustering of men, and he drew plans for great alliances and glorious victories to be, and he cast down Mordor and became himself a mighty king, benevolent and wise. Suddenly he stopped and waved his arms. "And they tell us to throw it away," he cried. "I do not say destroy it. That might be well if reason could show any hope of doing so. It does not. The only plan that is proposed to us is that a halfling should walk blindly into Mordor and offer the enemy every chance of recapturing it for himself. Fully! Surely you see it, my friend," he said, turning now suddenly to Frodo again. "You say
Talking shit, I'm gonna make you bleed,
are
fool.
afraid. If it is so, the boldest should pardon you. But is it not really your good sense that revolts?" "No, I am afraid," said Frodo, "simply afraid. But I am glad to have heard you speak so fully. My mind is clearer now." "Then you will come to Minas Tirith," cried Boromir. His eyes were shining and his face eager. "You misunderstand me," said Frodo. "But you will come, at least for a while," Boromir persisted. "My city is not far now, and it is little further from there to Mordor than from here. We have been long in the wilderness, and you need news of what the enemy is doing before you make a move. Come with me, Frodo," he said. "You need rest before your venture, if go you must." He laid his hand on the hobbit's shoulder in friendly fashion, but Frodo felt the hand trembling with suppressed excitement. He stepped quickly away and eyed with alarm the tall man, nearly twice his height and many times his matching strength. "Why are you so unfriendly?" said Boromir. "I am a true man, neither thief nor tracker. I need your ring. That you know now. But I give you my word that I do not desire to keep it. Will you not at least let me make trial of my plan? Lend me the ring." "No, no," cried Frodo. "The council laid it upon me to bear it." "It is by our own folly that the enemy will defeat us," cried Boromir. "How it angers me! Fool! Obstinate fool, running willfully to death and ruining our cause. If any mortals have claim to the ring, it is the men of Númenor, and not halflings. It is not yours, save by unhappy chance. It might have been mine. It should be mine. Give it to me." Frodo did not answer, but moved away till a great flat stone stood between them. Come, my friend," said Boromir in a softer voice. "Why not get rid of it? Why not be free of your doubt and fear? You can lay the blame on me if you will. You can say that I was too strong and took it by force, for I am too strong for you, halfling," he cried, and suddenly he sprang over the stone and leapt at Frodo. His fair and pleasant face was hideously changed. A raging fire was in his eyes. Frodo dodged aside and again put the stone between them. There was only one thing he could do. Trembling, he pulled out the ring upon its chain and quickly slipped it on his finger, even as Boromir sprang at him again. The man gasped, stared for a moment, amazed, and then ran wildly about, seeking here and there among the rocks and trees. "You miserable trickster!" he shouted. "Let me get my hands on you! Now I see your mind. You will take the ring to Sauron and sell us all. You have only waited your chance to leave us in the lurch. Curse you and all halflings to death and darkness." Then, catching his foot on a stone, he fell, sprawling, and lay upon his face. For a while he was as still as if his own curse had struck him down. Then suddenly he wept. He rose and passed his hand over his eyes, dashing away the tears. "What have I said?" he cried. "What have I done? Frodo! Frodo!" he called. "Come back! Madness took me, but A minute has passed. Come back.
Or was it nice?
There was no answer. Frodo did not even hear his cries. He was already far away, leaping blindly up the path to the hilltop. Terror and grief shook him, seeing in his thought the mad, fierce face of Boromir and his burning eyes. Soon he came out alone on the summit of Amon Hen and halted, gasping for breath. He saw as through a mist a wide, flat circle, paved with mighty flags and surrounded with a crumbling battlement, and in the middle, set upon 4 carven pillars, was a high seat reached by a stair of many steps. Up he went and sat upon the ancient chair, feeling like a lost child that had clambered upon the throne of mountain kings. At first he could see little. He seemed to be in a world of mist, in which there were only shadows. The rain was upon him. Then, here and there, the mist gave way, and he saw many visions, small and clear as if they were under his eyes, upon a table, and yet remote. There was no sound, only bright, living images. The world seemed to have shrunk and fallen silent. He was sitting upon the seat of Seath, on Amon Hen, the hill of the eye of the men of Numenor. Eastward he looked into wide, uncharted lands, nameless plains, and forests unexplored. Northward he looked, and the great river lay like a ribbon beneath him, and the misty mountains stood small and hard as broken teeth. Westward he looked, and saw the broad pastures of Rohan, and Orthanc, the pinnacle of Isengard, like a black spike. Southward he looked, and below his very feet the great river curled like a toppling wave and plunged over the falls of Rauros into a foaming pit. A glimmering rainbow played upon the fume. And Ethir Anduin he saw, the mighty delta of the river, and myriads of seabirds whirling like a white dust in the sun, and beneath them a green and silver sea rippling in endless lines. But everywhere he looked, he saw the signs of war. The misty mountains were crawling like anthills. Orcs were issuing out of 1,000 holes. Under the boughs of Mirkwood there was deadly strife of elves and men and fell beasts. The land of the Beornings was aflame. A cloud was over Moria. Smoke rose on the borders of Lorien. Horsemen were galloping on the grass of Rohan. Wolves poured from Isengard, from the havens of Harad. Ships of war put out to sea, and out of the east men were moving endlessly. Swordsmen, spearmen, bowmen upon horses, chariots of chieftains, and laden wains. All the power of the Dark Lord was in motion. Then turning south again, he beheld Minas Tirith. Far away, it seemed, and beautiful, white-walled, many-towered, proud and fair upon its mountain seat. Its battlements glittered with steel, and its turrets were bright with many banners. Hope leapt in his heart. But against Minas Tirith was set another fortress, greater and more strong. Thither, eastward, unwilling his eye was drawn. It passed the ruined bridges of Osgiliath, the grinning gates of Minas Morgul, and the haunted mountains, and it looked upon Gorgoroth, the valley of terror in the land of Mordor. Darkness lay there under the sun. Fire glowed amid the smoke. Mount Doom was burning, and a great reek rising. Then at last his gaze was held. War upon war, battlement upon battlement, black, immeasurably strong, mountain of iron,
Gate of steel,
like a little
tower
train thing
of
that
adamant,
does it
he
off
saw
screen.
it. Baradur, fortress of Sauron. Left it. And suddenly
There you
he
go.
felt an eye. There was an eye in the dark tower that did not sleep. He knew that it had become aware of his gaze. A fierce, eager will was there. It leapt towards him, almost like a finger. He felt it searching for him. Very soon it would nail him down, know just exactly where he was. Amon Lor, it touched. It glanced upon Tol Brandir. He threw himself from the seat, crouching, covering his head with his grey hood. He heard himself crying out, "Never! Never!" Or was it, "Verily I come to you"? He could not tell. Then, as a flash from some other point of power, there came to his mind another thought. Take it off. Take it off, fool! Take off the ring. The two powers strove in him. For a moment, perfectly balanced their piercing points, he writhed, tormented. Suddenly, he was aware of himself again. Frodo, neither the voice nor the eye. Free to choose, and with one remaining instant in which to do so. He took the ring off his finger. He was kneeling in clear sunlight before the high seat. A black shadow seemed to pass, like an arm above him. It missed Amon Hen and groped out west and faded. Then, all the sky was clean and blue, and birds sang in every tree. Frodo rose to his feet. A great weariness was on him, but his will was firm, and his heart lighter. He spoke aloud to himself. "I will do now what I must," he said. "This, at least, is plain. The evil of the ring is already at work, even in the company. And the ring must leave them before it does more harm. I will go alone. Some I cannot trust, and those I can trust are too dear to me, poor old Sam. And Merry and Pippin, Strider too, his heart yearns for Minas Tirith. And he will be needed there. Now Boromir has fallen into evil. I will go alone, at once." He went quickly down the path, and came back to the lawn where Boromir had found him. Then he halted, listening. He thought he could hear cries and calls from the woods near the shore below. "They'll be hunting for me," he said. "I wonder how long I've been away. Hours, I should think." He hesitated. "What can I do? But I must go now, or I shall never go. I shan't get the chance again." And like this, without any explanation, but surely they will understand. Sam will. And what else can I do? Slowly he drew out the ring and put it on once more. He vanished and passed down the hill, less than a rustle of the wind. The others remained long by the riverside. For some time they had been silent, moving restlessly about, but now they were sitting in a circle and they were talking. Every now and again they made efforts to speak of other things, of their long road and many adventures. They questioned Aragorn concerning the realm of Gondor and its ancient history, and the remnants of its great works that could still be seen in this strange borderland of the Emin. The stone kings, and the seats of Lor and Hen, and the great stair beside the falls of Valros. But always their thoughts and words
strayed back to Frodo and the ring. What would Frodo choose to do? Why was he hesitating? He is debating which course is the most desperate, I think, said Aragorn. And well he may. It is now more hopeless than ever for the company to go east, since we have been tracked by Gollum, and must fear that the secret of our journey is already betrayed. But Minas Tirith is no nearer to the fire and the destruction of the burden. We may remain there for a while and make a brave stand, but the Lord Denethor and all his men cannot hope to do what even Elrond said was beyond his power, either to keep the burden secret or to hold off the full might of the enemy when he comes to take it. Which way would any of us choose in Frodo's place? I do not know. Now, indeed, he miss Gandalf most. Grievous is our loss, said Legolas, yet we must needs make up our minds without his aid. Why cannot we decide, and so help Frodo? Let us call him back and then vote. I should vote for Minas Tirith.
And so should I, said Gimli. We, of course, were only sent to help the bear along the road, to go no further than we wished. And none of us is under any
flamed
oath
up there
or
a little
command
bit.
to seek Mount Doom. Hard was my parting from Lothlorien, yet I have come so far, and I say this. Now we have reached the last choice. It is clear to me that I cannot leave Frodo. I would choose Minas Tirith, but if he does not, then I follow him.
And I too will go with him, said Legolas. It would be faithless now to say farewell. It would indeed be a betrayal if we all left him, said Aragorn. But if he goes east, then all need not go with him, nor do I think that all should. That venture is desperate, as much so for 8 as for 3 or 2 or 1 alone. If you would let me choose, then I should appoint 3 companions. Sam, who could not bear it otherwise, and Gimli, and myself. Boromir will return to his own city where his father and his people need him, and with him the others should go, or at least Meriadoc and Peregrine, if Legolas is not willing to leave us.
That won't do at all, cried Merry. We can't leave Frodo. Pippin and I always intended to go wherever he went, and we still do. But we did not realise what that would mean. It seemed different so far away in the Shire or in Rivendell. It would be mad and cruel to let Frodo go to Mordor. Why can't we stop him? We must stop him, said Pippin. And that is what he is worrying about, I am sure. He knows we shan't agree to his going east, and he doesn't like to ask anyone to go with him, poor old fellow. Imagine it, going off to Mordor alone. Pippin shuddered. But the dear, silly old hobbit, he ought to know that he hasn't got to ask. He ought to know that if we can stop him, we shan't leave him. Begging your pardon, said Sam. I don't think you understand my master at all. He isn't hesitating about which way to go. Of course not. What's the good of Minas Tirith anyway? To him, I mean, begging your pardon, Master Boromir,
he added in turn. It was then that they discovered that Boromir, who at first had been sitting silent on the outside of the circle, was no longer there.
Now where's he got to? Cried Sam, looking worried. He's been a bit queer lately, to my mind. But anyway, he's not in this business. He's off to his home, as he always said, and no blame to him. But Mr. Frodo, he knows he's got to find the cracks of doom if he can. But he's afraid. Now it's come to the point, he's just plain terrified. That's what his trouble is. Of course, he's had a bit of schooling, so to speak. We all have since we left home. Or he'd be so terrified he'd just fling the ring in the river and bolt. But you he's still too frightened to start. And he isn't worrying about us either. Whether we'll go along with him or no, he knows we mean to. That's another thing that's bothering him. If he screws himself up to go, he'll want to go alone. Mark my words, we're going to have trouble when he comes back. For he'll screw himself up all right, as sure as his name's Baggins. I believe you speak more wisely than any of us, Sam, said Aragorn. And what shall we do if you prove right? Stop him! Don't let him go! Cried Pippin. I wonder, said Aragorn. He is the bearer, and the fate of the burden is on him. I do not think that it is our part to drive him one way or the other, nor do I think that we should succeed if we try. There are other powers at work far stronger. Well, I wish Frodo would screw himself up and come back and let us get it over, said Pippin. This waiting is horrible. Surely the time is up. Yes, said Aragorn. The hour is long past. The morning is wearing away. We must call for him. At that moment, Boromir reappeared. He came out from the tree and walked towards them without speaking. His face looked grim and sad. He paused as if counting those that were present, and then sat down aloof, with his eyes on the ground. Where have you been, Boromir? Asked Aragorn. Have you seen Frodo? Boromir hesitated for a second. Yes and no, he answered slowly. Yes. I found him some way up the hill. I spoke to him. I urged him to come to Minas Tirith and not to go east. I grew angry and he left me. He vanished. I've never seen such a thing happen before, though I've heard of it in tales. He must have put the ring on. I could not find him again. I thought he would return to you. Is that all that you have to say? Said Aragorn, looking hard and not too kindly at Boromir. Yes, he answered. I will say no more yet. This is bad, cried Sam, jumping up. I don't know what this man has been up to. Why should Mr. Frodo put the thing on? He didn't ought to have. And if he has, goodness knows what may have happened. But he wouldn't keep it on, said Mary. Not when he had escaped the unwelcome visitor like Bilbo used to. But where did he go? Where is he? Cried Pippin. He's been away ages now. How long is it since you saw Frodo last, Boromir? Asked Aragorn. Half an hour, maybe, he answered. Or it might be an hour. I've wandered for some time since. I do not know. I do not know. He put his head in his hands and sat as if bowed with grief. An hour since he vanished, shouted Sam. We must try and find him at once. Come on. Wait a moment, cried Aragorn. We must divide up into pairs and arrange. Here, hold on, wait. It was no good. They took no notice of him. Sam had dashed off first. Merry and Pippin had followed and were already disappearing westward into the trees by the shore, shouting, Frodo! Frodo! In their clear, high hobbit voices. Legolas and Gimli were running. A sudden panic or madness seemed to have fallen on the company. We shall all be scattered and lost, groaned Aragorn. Boromir, I do not know what part you have played in this mischief, but help now! Go after those two young hobbits and guard them at the least, even if you cannot find Frodo. Come back to this spot if you find him or any traces of him. I shall return soon. Aragorn sprang swiftly away and went in pursuit of Sam. Just as he reached the little lawn among the rowans, he overtook him, toiling uphill, panting and calling, Frodo! Come with me, Sam, he said. None of us should be alone. There is mischief about, I feel it. I'm going to the top, to the seat of Amon-Hen, to see what may be seen.
Around you, Dom.
It is as my heart guessed. Frodo went this way. Follow me. and keep your eyes open. He sped up the path. Sam did his best, but he could not keep up with Strider the Ranger, and soon fell behind. He had not gone far before Aragorn was out of sight ahead. Sam stopped and puffed. Suddenly he clapped his hand to his head. "Whoa, Sam Gamgee," he said aloud. "Your legs are too short, so use your head. Let me see now. Boromir isn't lying, that's not his way, but he hasn't told us everything. Something scared Mr. Frodo badly. He screwed himself up to the point sudden. He made up his mind at last to go. Where to? Off east. Not without Sam. Yes, without even his Sam. That's hard, cruel hard." Sam passed his hand over his eyes, brushing away the tears. "Steady, Gamgee," he said. "Think if you can. He can't fly across rivers, and he can't jump waterfalls. He's got no gear, so he's got to get back to the boats. Back to the boats! Back to the boats, Sam! Like lightning!" Sam turned and bolted back down the path. He fell and cut his knees. Up he got and ran on. He came to the edge of the lawn of Path Garland by the shore where the boats were drawn up out of the water. No one was there. There seemed to be cries in the woods behind, but he did not heed them. He stood gazing for a moment, stock still, gaping. A boat was sliding down the bank, all by itself. With a shout, Sam raced across the grass. The boat slipped into the water. "Come in, Mr. Frodo! Come in!" called Sam, and flung himself from the bank, clutching at the departing boat. He missed it by a yard. With a cry and a splash, he fell face downward into deep, swift water. Gurgling, he went under, and the river closed over his curly head. An exclamation of dismay came from the empty boat. A paddle swirled, and the boat put about. Frodo was just in time to grasp Sam by the hair as he came up, bubbling and struggling. Fear was staring in his round brown eyes. "Up you come, Sam, my lad," said Frodo. "Now take my hand." "Save me, Mr. Frodo," gasped Sam. "I'm drowned. I can't see your hand." "Here it is. Don't pinch, lad. I won't let you go. Tread water and don't flounder or you'll upset the boat. There now. Get hold of the side and let me use the paddle." With a few strokes, Frodo brought the boat back to the bank, and Sam was able to scramble out, wet as a water rat. Frodo took off the ring and stepped ashore again. "Of all the confounded nuisances, you are the worst, Sam," he said. "Oh, Mr. Frodo, that's hard," said Sam, shivering. "That's hard. Try to go without me and all. If I hadn't guessed right, where would you be now?" "Safely on my way." "Safely," said Sam. "All alone, without me to help you. I couldn't have borne it. It'd have been the death of me." "It would be the death of you to come with me, Sam," said Frodo, "and I could not have borne that." "Not as certain as being left behind," said Sam. "But I can go to Mordor. You know that well enough, Mr. Frodo. Of course you are. And I'm coming with you." "Now, Sam," said Frodo, "don't hinder me. The others will be coming back at any minute. If they catch me here, I shall have to argue and explain, and I shall never have the heart or the chance to get off. But I must go at once. It's the only way." "Of course it is," answered Sam, "but not alone. I'm coming too, or neither of us isn't going. We'll knock holes in all the boats first." Frodo actually laughed. A sudden warmth and gladness touched his heart. "Leave one," he said. "We'll need it. But you can't come like this. without your gear or food or anything. Oh, just hold on a moment and I'll get my stuff, cried Sam eagerly. It's all ready. I thought we should be off today. He rushed to the camping place, fished out his pack from the pile where Frodo had laid it. When he emptied the boat of his companion's goods, grabbed a spare blanket and some extra packages of food, and ran back. So all my plan is spoiled, said Frodo. It is no good trying to escape you. I'm glad, Sam. I cannot tell you how glad. Come along. It is plain that we were meant to go together. We will go, and may the others find a safe road. Strider will look after them. I don't suppose we shall see them again. Yet we may, Mr. Frodo. We may, said Sam. So Frodo and Sam set off on the last stage of the quest together. Frodo paddled away from the shore, and the river bore them swiftly away, down the western arm and past the frowning cliffs of Tol Brandir. The roar of the great falls drew nearer. Even with such help as Sam could give, it was hard work to pass across the current at the southward end of the island and drive the boat eastward towards the far shore. At length, they came to land again upon the southern slopes of Amon Lor. There they found a shelving shore, and they drew the boat out high above the water and hid it as well as they could behind a great boulder. Then, shouldering their burdens, they set off, seeking a path that would bring them over the grey hills of the Emin and down into the land of shadow.
The end. We hope you have enjoyed this production of The Fellowship of the Ring, The Lord of the Rings, Book 1 by J.R.R. Tolkien, narrated
Here's the next title in this series.
This is
I was into that book. I had to figure out what book to put on, just at least what book to start tomorrow.
Divine Comedy, written by Dante Alighieri and translated by Clive James. Narrated by Eduardo Ballerini. Book 1. Hell. Canto 1. At the midpoint of the path through life, I found myself lost in a wood so dark the way ahead was blotted out. The keening sound I still make shows how hard it is to say, how harsh and bitter that place felt to me. Merely to think of it renews the fear. So bad that death, by only a degree, could possibly be worse. As you shall hear, it led to good things, too, eventually. But there and then I saw no sign of those. And can't say even now how I had come to be there, stunned and following my nose away from the straight path. And then, still numb from pressure on the heart, still in a daze, I stumbled on the threshold of a hill where trees no longer grew. Lifting my gaze, I saw its shoulders edged with overspill from our sure guide, the sun, whose soothing rays at least a little melted what that night of dread had done to harden my heart's lake. And like someone who crawls, half dead with fright, out of the sea and breathes, and turns to take a long look at the water, so my soul, still thinking of escape from the dark wood I had escaped, looked back to see it whole. The force field no one ever has withstood and stayed alive. I rested for a while, and then resumed along the empty slope my journey, in the standard crofter's style, weight on the lower foot. Harder to cope when things got steeper, and a mountain cat, with party-colored pelt, light on its feet, in a trice was in my face, and stayed like that, barring my way, encouraging retreat. 3 beasts, was this the leper lecturing, were said to block the penitential climb for sinners and for all society, and here was one sticking to me like lime. Not only did it hamper me, it made me think of turning back. Now was the time morning begins. The sun, fully displayed at last, began its climb, but not alone. The stars composing Aries, sign of spring, were with it now, nor left it on its own when the first love made every lovely thing the world can boast. A thought to give me heart, that I might counter in this gentle hour of a sweet season the obstructive art, pretty to see but frightful in its power, of that cat with the colored coat. But wait, if fear had waned, still there was fear enough to bring on pride, the lion in full spate, head high, hot breath to make the air look rough, as rocks in summer seem to agitate the atmosphere above them without cease, so rabid was its hunger. On its heels the wolf appeared, whose name is Avarice, made thin by a cupidity that steals insatiably out of its own increase, obtained from many people it made poor. This one propelled such terror from its face into my mind, all thoughts I had before of ever rising to a state of grace were crushed. And so, as one who, mad for gain, must find one day that all he gains is lost in a flood of tears, a conscience racked with pain, just so I felt my hopes came at the cost of being forced by this unresting beast, little by little down towards that wood, whose gloom the sun can never in the least irradiate. But all at once there stood before me one who somehow seemed struck dumb by the weight of a long silence. "Pity me, and try to tell me in what form you come," I cried. "Is it a shade or man I see?" And he replied, "No, not a man, not now. I was once, though, a Lombard. Parents born in Mantua, both born there." That was how his words emerged, as if with slow care torn, like pages of a book soaked shut by time from his clogged throat. "Caesar was getting on when I was young. That's Julius. A crime, his death. Then, after he was gone, I lived in Rome. The good Augustus reigned. The gods were cheats and liars. As for me, I was
All
a
right,
fool."
everyone. I'm gonna call into
He
the
grew
street
less
tonight.
constrained in speech,
I
as
thank
if
everyone
trade
for
talk
stopping
brought
by.
fluency.
Everyone continues to stop
I
by.
sang about Anchises' son, the just Aeneas, pious,
I
fearless.
appreciate all y'all's
When proud
support.
Troy was
Until
burned
next
to
time, everyone.
ashes,
God stay
ashes
safe.
turned to dust, which he shook off his feet that